Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are doing good. Today, once again, I'm back in another live session, which is a part of our 50 days live session that we at CSAP IAS Academy have been conducting for our students. And as a part of this initiative, today I have come up with yet another interesting topic and very important topic from your GS2 paper. And the topic for our today's discussion is going to be good governance from policy to progress. So in this session I'll be talking about this. I'll be introducing the concept of good governance. What is good governance? What is its importance? And what are the challenges? What are the institutional mechanisms that we have for promoting good governance, and why this good governance, concept of good governance, is so very crucial, for any country to make progress and develop. So that's why it has to move from policy to progress. It has, if a country has to progress, it must therefore promote the idea of good governance. So I will be discussing about this concept in detail, and I hope that you all will be joining me and will continue with me in this discussion. And I also look forward to your greater participation during the course of this discussion, and I hope you will provide your feedbacks and comments so that from these feedbacks and comments we can actually work upon these comments and take the initiatives as per your specific requirement, because this initiative is actually designed to help you in your preparation of mains. And as you know that APSC prelims result has recently been declared, and now you all have been preparing in full swing. So therefore it is our responsibility to offer the best guidance in your preparation and to help you in the best possible manner. So in that series, today I have come up with this topic of good governance, which is very important both from your GS2 paper, and also the particular topic is linked. It also has a relation to your ethics paper. So without wasting much time, let us begin our discussion. And in that sequence, let me tell you that we have been actually conducting this care batch for those who have actually cleared their prelims, and the 0th attempt so in the care batch is already ongoing, and we are providing hand holding to our students. And you can see in the 0th attempt we have various features like weekly test series, what to study, what not to study, daily answer writing, weekly test series. So we have so many aspects so as to help you prepare for your mains. And in the care, basically we provide this specific in that sense guidance, hand holding in you and help you in the preparation. So without wasting much time, I'll straight away come. We have also been conducting this ethics course, and as you know, this ethics and essay basically plays a very important role, and I have been conducting this ethics course. So if you wish, then you can reach out to us. We will be sharing, our team will be sharing a Google form where you can drop your comments, feedbacks, queries, and our team will get back to you. And whatever guidance and help you need, our CSAP team will reach out and offer the best possible help to you. Okay, so good governance from policy to progress. Okay, so good governance, as you all know, governance is the art of governing, right? And therefore the good governance is the process of decision making and implementation, which is generally characterized by transparency, accountability, rule of law, participation, and efficiency, ensuring equitable and inclusive development, right? And good governance basically aligns with United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, and when we look at good governance, it is also considered necessary for the survival of democracy. So when we talk about good governance, let's say when we talk about governance, we can say that there can be two types of governance. One is the corrupt governance. In the corrupt governance, there will be, it will be characterized by, let's say, the overwhelming presence of corruption, the inefficiency, and therefore the public service delivery will be compromised, there will be ineffectiveness, and therefore it will create more hurdles for the citizens. On the other hand, when we talk about good governance, the idea, so in the corrupt governance there will be secrecy, but when we talk about good governance will be basically promoting transparency and accountability. There will be ethical aspect with regard to the governance, which will be motivated with the idea of serving the people, the welfare of the people, and for that the governance needs to be made effective, so that the governance is basically able to deliver the services in a very time bound manner. So therefore the effectiveness, and most important is to uphold transparency, accountability in its functioning becomes inevitable when we talk about good governance. So when we talking about good governance, there are 8 key principles, that participation, rule of law, transparency, responsiveness, consensus oriented, equity, effectiveness, accountability. These are all important aspects of good governance. So when we look at any governance of any society, so how do we know whether it is a good governance or not? Right? So we can look at some of the important features, whether this governance basically contains, let's say, these particular principles, whether it has these particular features or not. So if any governance has these key principles, then we can definitely say that that particular governance is a good governance, right? And as we all know that this concept of good governance basically evolved after the 1980s, when the international institutions, like IMF, World Bank, World Bank particularly, they came up with the concept of good governance. They realized that, offering foreign aid was actually not bringing about the desired changes in many of the societies and countries, and therefore they felt that the problem was in the governance, that their governance was basically corrupt. So then they thought that the good governance was essential if the development of those societies were to be promoted. And it is from that, right, so crisis in governance, the report of World Bank, and subsequently the prescription, the prescribing that whenever we will lend money, you also need to make certain reforms, and you need to make your governance good governance. So this kind of push towards a global discourse where the concept of good governance basically gained currency, and from the 1990s onwards basically it became a buzzword, and it became the the concept basically gained a lot of importance and currency. So this is basically a brief introduction about the concept of good governance. And as we said, that governance basically refers to the structures and processes that ensure authority is exercised responsibly, and their good governance adds ethical and democratic values to this framework. So if governance is basically referring to structures and processes which basically ensure that authority is exercised responsibly, there when we say good governance, when we try to make this governance a good governance, what happens is that we basically then add this ethical and democratic values to this framework. So how, when the governance basically becomes ethical, while incorporating these democratic values, it actually becomes the good governance. Now, as I already told you that there are basically 8 major pillars of good governance and participation. When we say participation, inclusive decision making involving citizens, civil society, marginalized groups, this becomes very, very important. And in today's concept, we just don't talk about participation, but rather we talk about informed participations. So the citizens should not be a mute spectator but rather the citizens should actively participate in the governance, and then only that particular governance will basically become good governance. So similarly, we have rule of law, fair, impartial and enforceable legal system, right? So rule of law again makes it a condition that there should not be overwhelming presence of discretionary power, because it says that too much of discretionary power can also negate the concept of rule of law, and there it becomes very interesting for us to understand this concept of rule of law, and in the course of our discussion we will also elaborate on this particular aspect. Now again, we have transparency, which means the open access to information and decision making process. So this transparency is antithetical to that concept of secrecy. As I told you earlier, that those corrupt governance may be characterized by overwhelming secrecy, where everything will be kept secret. But if that governance is a good governance, it should actually promote open access to information and decision making processes so as to uphold that transparency. Now again, accountability, the answerability of the public officials to citizens and institutions. So whatever the course of action these officials take, they should be accountable for their course of action. And that is what is accountability. So this accountability in a way will ensure that those civil servants and bureaucrats will not abuse the power, and they will basically use the power judicially, ethically, and upholding the constitutional values, right? Similarly, responsiveness. Now, the governance basically is linked with people's welfare. Governance has to do, has to basically be able to promote the welfare of the people, and governance basically needs to basically provide certain services, and this delivery of these services has to be done in a time bound manner, and for that it becomes imperative that the governance is responsive. Again, next is equity and inclusiveness. Now ensuring that no group is marginalized, right? So as the constitution outlines that each and every segment of the society is equally important, and therefore the governance therefore should promote the idea of incorporating everyone within its fold, and therefore in the process it must become inclusive governance in that sense, right? Now effectiveness and efficiency, again optimal use of resources for public welfare. So the resources has to be used very productively. Next is consensus oriented, where mediating diverse interests for collective good becomes very important. So this way we have understood that there are certain key pillars of good governance, and therefore whenever we are trying to make an assessment of any governance of any society, what we can do is that we can look at these pillars, whether these pillars are present in the model of governance of that society or not. And if that governance lacks these key principles of governance, then it may be that that particular governance is a corrupt governance. And that is what various reports, the World Bank and other reports highlighted in the 1980s, when they found that despite a large number of fundings to the various developing countries, that subsequent basically substantive changes were not noticed in those countries, and therefore they found that the governance of those particular societies was largely responsible for that, because they failed to channelize the fund that they were receiving, and a lot of misappropriation and corruption was taking place vis-a-vis those funds. And that is why they emphasized that it was so very important to improve the governance process, to uphold transparency and accountability in the governance, right? So now let us look at the historical evolution of the governance in India. As you know, our format, that what we do is that we introduce the concept and try to see the interlinkages of the given topic with other GS papers. So as I have already told you that the topic for our discussion today, that is the good governance. As you all know that this topic actually comes from our GS2 governance section, but this topic is also linked with other GS papers, and that we can see. For example, when we look at the historical evolution of governance, then we can find the ancient roots. For example, Kautilya's Arthashastra, what does it tell Kautilya's Arthashastra, which is again one of the important classics. What does it tell us about the governance? Can we learn from Kautilya's Arthashastra with regard to governance? There, of course, the classic emphasized on the ethical governance, accountability and welfare oriented administration, because Kautilya believed that that the king should find his happiness in the welfare, in the happiness of his subjects. So therefore, promoting that welfare of the people was very important component of governance in ancient times, and Kautilya's Arthashastra rightly captures that. Now, if we look at colonial legacy, centralized bureaucratic systems under the British rule. Now, Government of India Act we can always refer to, because that also tells get it fixed, and we will continue. Is it all right? Okay. sorry for the interruption, but I hope the momentum is not broken. And if you have continued with me so far, I would request that you just subscribe the channel, like the this particular video if you are liking this content so far, and most importantly, please do drop your comment and feedback. Your comments and feedbacks are very important to us, and believe me, I read each and every comment and try to respond to them personally. So please do comment, and now let us continue, and also drop your queries and concerns, whatever you have, because our team will be sharing a Google form, and you can just leave your concerns, and our CSAP IAS Academy team will get back to you and will try to help you in the best possible manner. So let us continue. So therefore, we were basically talking about how these constitutional provisions basically enable citizens' active participation in the governance, because this active participation in the governance is so very important, right? And directive principles and again fundamental duties also basically uphold the spirit of following the constitution, and respecting the constitution and the institutions established by the constitution, and abide by them. Now to carry forward, we can talk about the institutional mechanisms. As I was just referring to, we have constitution, we have election commission, article 324, which basically empowers the election commission to conduct free and fair elections. So it basically deals with the electoral governance of the country, and in the electoral governance, the election commission has been entrusted with the power. It is an independent body which basically will regulate, which basically will ensure that all the entire election process in our country is very transparent, fair and free. And it has also been declared as that the free and fair election is one of the basic structures of the Indian Constitution. So therefore what we have is that we have different institutions. The Constitution has basically provided specific institutions with specific objective. For example, election commission will perform that role. Similarly, controller and auditor general basically will oversee the financial accountability. So wherever there are financial irregularities, those can be identified, flagged by the CAG, and its report actually become very, very important for all of us. And particularly if we are preparing for APSC and UPSC, the CAG reports and some of the important portions of those reports can actually give us much needed insight while framing some of the answers. So the CAG report again becomes very important, because it deals and it highlights whenever there are financial irregularities and corruption and scams. Similarly, judiciary, for example, article 32, article 226, high courts, it basically protects the fundamental rights of the citizens through various measures. And we have now therefore we can say, based on this discussion of the Constitution, which basically provides a greater framework to ensure that the governance in our country becomes very effective, where the citizens' participation is basically encouraged, and where transparent procedures are basically followed, by various institutions. So looking at all of this, we can definitely say that Constitution can therefore be seen as a living framework for good governance. Now, key pillars. Now, institutional framework. Let us look at the various branches. For example, right, in the last video we also talked about balance of power. So if you have not gone through the lecture, please, I would request that go through the last YouTube live session that I conducted, where I have specifically and in detail I have talked about the balance of powers. And then, because this topic becomes all the more important for you to understand, right? So from that, we can talk about these three branches. Let's say legislature. Now legislature performs this role of enacting laws, as we all know, and it also oversees executive through various committees. For example, we have public accounts committee, right? So and also because it enacts laws, or it promulgates laws, therefore from time to time it can come up with certain progressive laws like RTI, which therefore promotes transparency. Next, executive the role of the executive is to implement policy, right? So the executive implements policies, delivers public services, and in doing so there can be certain initiatives that can be taken where the public service delivery mechanism can be certainly improvised and made better. For example, Digital India, right? The Swachh Bharat, and also Aadhaar enabled service delivery for efficiency is another leading example that we can talk about. Thirdly, the third branch, which is, let's say, the judiciary, basically protects constitutional values, or let's say it also protects the constitution. It is the guardian of the constitution, and therefore it in that sense safeguards the constitutional values and ensures accountability through PILs, for example, and judicial review. PIL is public interest litigation, as you all know, right? And many a times, for example, judiciary has also played very important role. Like, for example, we can refer to Visakha guidelines, for workplace safety, where this concept of GSKs, Gender Sensitization Committee Against Sexual Harassment, right? So in the workplace where there are male and female workers are working, so this the mechanism to address the menace or the problem of sexual harassment needs to be put in place. So these kind of through various such initiatives, and also the provisions like public interest litigation, or for example through various judicial review, it has actually played a very, very important role in and finally, media and civil society, which is generally considered as the fourth pillar of democracy. But unfortunately, in our today's time, the mainstream media has also faced a major criticism, and many times it has also been alleged that from the fourth pillar of democracy is actually media becoming the first major threat of democracy. Now this is a critical aspect. I am not going to dwell onto it, but nonetheless there is a critical assessment of the role of media. But nonetheless, conventionally, the media has been regarded as the fourth pillar of democracy, and therefore which plays along with the civil society a very important role as the watchdog of governance. And therefore, because the media highlights various scams, corruptions, and draws the attention of the government, the bureaucracy, encourages people's participation, and that way it actually has been playing a very, very important role despite all the criticisms against it. But of course, there are always scopes to make improvisation. Now let's talk about the issues concerning governance. As we all know that corruption is one of the major problem of governance, and this again, corruption is again linked with this lack of accountability. Corruption and lack of accountability, wherever there is lack of accountability, there are chances of corruption increasing. And when we talk about corruption, what is the root cause of corruption, then we can talk about greed, right? So when we are talking about all these aspects, we can also probably, if you are simultaneously preparing ethics, then you will understand when I say what is the root cause of corruption, then we will talk about greed. And with relating the greed, we can say this world is sufficient to fulfill everyone's need, but not even one person's greed. So Mahatma Gandhi and all of that. Now so such greed has led to corruption in the governance, the abuse of the public office for personal fulfillment, aggrandizement, self-interest, rather than promoting and serving the cause of the people. And persistent corruption, now what it does is that it erodes public trust. The faith of the people in the governance system is actually lost, and that can be a very damaging sign for any society when people lose their faith in the governance process, in the institutions. Now for example, we have seen 2G scam, Commonwealth Games scams, and so many scams from the very beginning, Bofors scam, the allegations about Rafale and so on and so forth, right? So we have n number of scams that have been highlighted, and these scams from time to time basically has done great damage done to our country. And when you look at Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index 2024, there you will find India's rank as 86th out of 180 countries, and that is an alarming sign. We need to therefore acknowledge and we need to work, we need to take up this project of making our governance in the true sense and in every spirit a good governance, so that we can climb up in such transparency measures. Now, many a times we also find this misuse of discretionary powers by bureaucrats, and not just bureaucrats, but many a times we also find it by, let's say, governors. And in the last discussion when we talked about this balance of powers, we have also discussed, you know, the how the governors have also abused the discretionary power at their disposal. So therefore, I would request that you also go and follow that discussion on balance of power. So you can go to CSAP IAS Academy's YouTube channel and you can type balance of powers and you will find it, right? So bureaucratic inefficiency and red tape, again, you know, the delays in service delivery and complex procedures hinders governance. Many a times the delay. So as I told you that if it is a good governance, it has to deliver the services in a very time bound manner. But if the governance, you know, persistently delays the delivery of these services, then the whole purpose would be defeated, you know. And many times the, you know, complex procedures, many a times, for example, you might have heard about certain terminologies like, you know, ease of doing business, you know, making it easier. With regard to, let's say, income tax filing also, many times it is alleged that the process itself is so complex that people do not feel like, you know, and they, because themselves are unable to feel, you know, they have to approach. So many a times we need to simplify the process to encourage, you know, large number of people's participation, so as to promote people's participation. Many a times making the entire processes easy becomes very, very important, because then that can push and that can help promote the concept of good governance. Now many cases, for example, with regard to judiciary also, and there is a statement that justice delayed is justice, you know, denied. And we have seen how many cases are pending, you know, almost, you know, 5 crore plus cases in Indian courts are pending, which has greatly affected the justice delivery mechanism. And any governance, you know, if it is not promoting justice, then that is a serious concern, that is a matter of serious concern. Now Pratap Bhanu Mehta's The Burden of Democracy, this basically work critiques this bureaucratic, you know, bureaucratic resistance to reform. Many times the bureaucracy is not, you know, willing to, you know, accept those reforms or changes, because it is so comfortable with the existing system, but therefore there are urgent needs to initiate certain reforms, because without those reforms the governance will continue to suffer from all these, you know, malfunctions and you know, major problems. So because the question then comes that how can a democracy that empowers citizen, you know, empowers participation, fail to deliver timely justice? So if democracy that empowers participation, democracy has to empower participation, but if it, you know, again fails to deliver timely justice, then, you know, it will not make any sense. So therefore democracy must actually deliver justice in a time bound manner, then only there is, you know, this great purpose of promoting people's welfare will be achieved. Now let us look at the interconnectedness with, you know, various GS paper. For example, GS1 History and Society segment, we can say that governance basically evolved from colonial centralization to democratic decentralization. So how the historical, you know, evolution of the concept of governance in our country, right, can actually help us, you know, make better sense of the concept of governance. Let's say it has evolved from colonial centralization to the democratic decentralization through 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment in 1992. So therefore what we have is that now also you know, from that colonial, you know, evolution, now we have reached a level where there is this right to information, which basically plays a very important role in empowering marginalized sections of the society. Similarly, GS3, where we find development, security as the important themes, right? So there, good governance, basically we all know that good governance drives inclusive growth. So when we are talking about growth, when we are talking about development, we also need to ask these questions. This development is for whom, and who is paying the price of this development? You know, if we are talking about growth, whether this growth is actually inclusive or not, you know, whose growth, you know. So these kind of questions become very important. So if we want to basically promote a participatory, an inclusive model of development and inclusive model of growth, then the establishment of good governance becomes inevitable or indispensable. So only a good governance will be able to promote the concept of good, inclusive growth and development. Similarly, security, in order to provide and ensure greater security in the society, right? Only a governance model of governance which basically addresses these issues very efficiently will only be able to secure people in the society. So therefore, similarly, digital India for transparency, for pushing transparency, can be. Now again, GS4 ethics, as I have already pointed out, that constitutional morality, for example, right, the ethical course of action, use of power in a very judicious manner, in a very ethical manner. So this is all flowing from our understanding of the ethics paper. Now governance reflects constitutional morality and ethical leadership, and governance must be ethical to promote the welfare of the people. So if the governance is not ethical, if it is devoid of the ethical aspect, it will not be able to promote the welfare of the people. It will only end up promoting the interest of those who are involved in the governance, and in the process the entire governance will become a corrupt governance, as I told you in the very beginning. So that's why it becomes all the more important to ensure that this constitutional morality is applied, and that the governance actually becomes ethical so as to be able to promote the welfare of the people, and even those who are holding the constitutional positions, for example, right, whether they are actually using those powers in an ethical manner, or they are abusing the power at their disposal. So these are the very important ethical questions, and as the similarly, those who are preparing specifically for APSC Mains, and now that you do not have much time, I think you should take seriously, and you should take better guidance, the expert faculty who can actually help you in a very specific way in your mains preparation, because those who are going to write the APSC Mains, you do not have much time. So I would recommend and I would suggest that you reach out to CSAP IAS Academy, and we have taken great initiatives so as to help you in your mains. So Assam specific, of course, as you know, like for example, if Assam Accord implementation was to be done very effectively, now that commitment from the governance becomes very important. Similarly, while resolving the border disputes, it basically requires a robust governance, and now, so how do we establish good governance? What are the ways ahead, right? We need to make institutional reforms. As I told you, that we need to acknowledge the problems and work around those problems so as to make the governance much more effective, and for that certain institutions can be strengthened, which can basically then promote and ensure that our governance is actually functioning to as per the expectation. So we need to strengthen Lokpal to combat corruption. As we already said, that corruption is another one of the major problems of governance, and this corruption needs to be tackled, right? And for that Lokpal can be strengthened. Similarly, codify discretionary powers of governors. This various commissions from time to time, including Sarkariya Commission, Punchi Commission, and various other bodies have from time to time recommended that the discretionary power of governors needs to be streamlined, and it needs to be, we need to codify these discretionary powers so that these powers are actually not abused, and we need to enhance parliamentary oversight through robust committees, e-governance initiative like Umang for seamless service delivery, so we can actually follow such models. Now, citizen-centric governance, as we told you that participation of the citizen is very important in the governance. So the entire governance actually has to be citizen-centric. For whom the governance is there? It is for the people, right? It is to promote the welfare of the people, citizens. So therefore, the governance has to be necessarily citizen-centric. Okay. So, and what are the recommendations in this regard? We need to promote participatory governance, and that can be done through gram sabhas and urban rural bodies, they can basically play a very important role in promoting the idea of participatory governance. We can expand the scope of RTI and ensure proactive disclosures. As you all know that we have RTI. However, with regard to RTI, there are recent controversies, particularly with regard to certain amendments that have been made. Many allege that these amendments actually dilute the very strength of RTI. Now that can be a major concern for all of us, and we actually need to expand the scope of RTI to and ensure that there is proactive disclosure, because when we disclose effectively all these informations, then this transparency gets promoted, right? And by promoting transparency, we can actually promote good governance. And similarly, citizen charters with enforceable timelines for public services. So we need to work and focus in these arenas. And Sevottam model for public service delivery, basically, right? So this is the Sevottam model. Okay, so now technology and innovation. Again, we are living in the era of technology. Great innovations are being made. So what do we do? What does the governance do vis-a-vis such technological advancement? Should the governance stay away? That cannot be the solution. The changing time, the changing society, the governance also needs to adopt these changes, these innovations, the new creations that have come up, and we need to take help of them. So we can talk about leveraging artificial intelligence, blockchain, technology can be used for transparent governance. Land record digitization, for example, can be effectively done by taking help of such technological innovations. Now again, this portion actually comes from your other GS paper, you see. So how the knowledge of this particular topic or the knowledge of your technology section can actually help you in this particular section while discussing about good governance, or similarly strengthen cyber security to protect e-governance platforms, right? When we promote e-governance platforms, the cyber security mechanisms, we also need to strengthen the cyber security so that there are no attacks. Use data analytics for evidence-based policy making. Now the policy making has to be evidence-based, and in today's time, there is so much of data, as we all popularly say that data is the new oil. So if data is the new oil, the governance, the policy making must also use this data, analyze this data, so that they could actually devise effective policy initiatives. Now India basically takes Aadhaar UPI as a global model for digital governance, right? And of course, we have made significant progress in this direction if you look at the Aadhaar and UPI, right? So it's not that we have not done anything. There have been certain steps that we have taken in the right direction, but yet we can say there are lot more for us to do so as to increase our ranking in the with regard to transparency. Now, so therefore we need to basically promote smart governance, right? We all are living in the era where everyone is trying to become smart, or at least appear smart. So why not the governance? Let's make the governance smart. So what does making the governance smart mean? It has to be simple. S stands for simple, okay, and M stands for moral. Okay, again it's from your ethics paper also. A, you can accountability. R stands for responsiveness or responsive, and T for transparency, right? So this way we actually need to make the governance smart. So in today's time we all have to become smart, and our governance also has to become smart. But here by smart I mean simple, moral, accountable, responsive and transparent governance. Now let us look at some of the previous year questions, as we have been always doing. Like, good governance is considered a key to achieving sustainable development goals and human well-being. Evaluate this assertion with reference to the initiatives undertaken by Government of India in realizing sustainable goals in India. So you see, so how good governance becomes or plays a very important role vis-a-vis the achievement of sustainable development goals, right? bureaucracy is not an obstacle to it has to be is not an obstacle to democracy but an inevitable complement to it. So whether bureaucracy is an obstacle to democracy or it is basically a complement to it, in the right of the criticism suggesting that bureaucracy fails to facilitate change. So how effectively bureaucracy has been able to facilitate change. The increasing use of AI is expected to fundamentally transform the ways in which governance is done in India. You see, this is what we were talking about, the artificial intelligence, right? We are living in the era of artificial. So therefore, when we read such topics, what we get to know from these previous year questions is that the current discourse many a times is incorporated in the questions. So therefore, the AI, blockchain technology, how these technologies can be used in promoting a better governance, a governance which basically not just make the process simple for the citizens but also upholds transparency. So therefore, we need to basically situate our understanding of this good governance vis-a-vis the contemporary developments, the recent trends in the various countries' model of governance. So we also need to refer to various models of governance which have actually brought about significant changes with the help of their good governance. Now therefore, what is the way forward? Improving governance ecosystem is very much important, as we have already said that we are somewhere down the line lacking when it comes to transparency, right? The various various yardsticks that are applied in measuring transparency, there we are actually falling short. So we have lot more to do. So we need to enforce RTI compliance and reduce pendency in information commissions, right? Again, this can be a major aspect that with regard to chief election commissioners, chief information commissioners, right? Then strengthen anti-corruption bodies like Lokpal and CBC. We have already said long-term measures also needs to be taken. For example, constitutional amendments to clarify center-state roles, because many a times there is a conflict between the center state, due to which also many of the governance-related issues get jeopardized. Impacting capacity building for bureaucrats through training, and therefore God Karma Yogi can be one of the important initiative. So capacity building measures, right? For example, we are living in the era of artificial intelligence, right? Blockchain technology. So, but if those civil servants, those bureaucrats, the people who are working in our model of governance, if they are not equipped with those skill sets, the modern day challenges, the modern technologies, then they will not be able to deliver to the best of their potential. So what we need to do is that we need to focus on their capacity building. We need to train them, we need to provide them the required assistance, so that they will be able to use these technologies so as to promote the idea of good governance, right? And global inspiration, as I was telling you, that we need to take global inspiration from global discourses. Singapore's model of meritocratic and transparent governance can be basically, we can be inspired by. Now finally, Subhash Kashyap's Our Constitution basically advocates for governance which is rooted in constitutional values. So we need to promote the culture of governance which is actually rooted in constitutional values, as B.R. Ambedkar also very rightly highlighted in the Constituent Assembly, that we need to promote a culture of constitutional morality. So those who work in the civil service, those who work in the administration, those who work in various branches of governance, right? We must ensure that they basically are guided by constitutional values. So finally, with all this discussion, I think now we need to basically sum up. But before I proceed and try to conclude and wrap up this session, I would once again request all of you that if you have liked this content, please do like, and most importantly, leave your comment. Generally, I read each and every comment and I make an effort to respond to each and every comment personally. And I tell you what, that your comments actually mean a lot to us, because it is based on your comments that we can actually make certain improvements and refine our content so as to best help you in your preparation journey. right? So finally, let us conclude by saying that good governance is actually the cornerstone of India's democratic resilience, which basically also ensures and implements India's constitutional commitment, for example, justice, equity, accountability, and so on and so forth. And therefore the topic, as we already pointed out, that is multidisciplinary in nature, right? So it is equally important in the ethics paper, for example, right? There also we talk about transparency, right? The good governance, the role of civil servants, the qualities in civil servants, right? So by addressing challenges like corruption and over centralization, and by addressing the problems of inefficiencies, India can actually build a robust governance model. India has the potential to build a robust governance model which will ultimately align with its constitutional vision, right? And therefore the robust governance model which will be ultimately able to promote the greater welfare of the poor and marginalized sections of the society, and thereby uphold the true spirit for which the governance has to basically function. And finally, we can say that governance is not about use of power, it is about empowering the powerlessness, empowering the powerless, those who are helpless, those who are poor and marginalized, how we can empower them. Governance is actually a tool for that, and that is how those who are in the governance need to realize, and therefore they need to function in a very ethical manner, applying the constitutional morality and constitutional values so as to promote the idea of empowering the powerless through the governance. So with this, I think today we have adequately summed up our today's topic, that is good governance and its importance, what are the challenges, its interconnectedness with other GS topics. So in the process, I have provided you a brief overview of the concept of good governance. I have also talked about how the concept of good governance came, how it has been worked upon, what are the problems, and how we can basically build a robust governance model which will eventually help us achieve the constitutional goals of promoting welfare of the poor and the marginalized sections of the society, by ensuring that there is effective delivery of the services and that there is transparency and accountability in the functioning of this governance model, and which eventually becomes free from all those corrupt practices. But for that, we need to ensure that those who are involved in the governance actually get guided by ethical values and they apply constitutional morality in their functioning. So with this I would like to sum up today's discussion, but I hope that you all have enjoyed today's session, and if you have really liked the content that I have brought to you, I would request that please do support such an initiative by liking this video and also by offering your feedback and comment, and we will be also back with other subsequent topics as per your suggestions and as per your feedback. Till then, I would request you to continue with your best preparation, because your mains is approaching now, and in that preparation, whatever kind of guidance that you basically expect from us, please feel free to write to us. You can either write through comment, or you can fill up that Google form which has been circulated in this video, and based on your feedbacks and comments, we will get back to you and we will help you. We will do the maximum possible so as to guide you in your mains preparation and help you specifically, so that tomorrow you can become a bureaucrat who actually will promote the idea of good governance and contribute in ensuring that there is greater welfare in the society, where basically you will then promote the the constitutional objective of promoting welfare of the poor and marginalized sections of the society. So with that objective, I look forward to your comments and feedbacks, and we will meet you in the next subsequent live sessions. Till then, I would like to say thank you once again, and do prepare well for your exam. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.